Guys, welcome back to another Bukowski's YouTube video. Today we got our top 24 running backs for week 9 of fantasy football. And boys, before we get into it, we have a completely free group chat on Chalkboard. Almost 9,000 members on there. If you want to join, we give out our weekly rankings. RBs go all the way to 36 on there. We got top 40 wide receivers, 20 tight ends, 20 QBs. So much free stuff, trade advice, waiver wire targets. Check it out. It's the first link in the description and it's absolutely free. Running back number 1 is Austin Ekeler. He has been absolutely killing it lately. He has been on fire. Had a bye week last week, got a rest week. Has a great matchup against the Falcons. The clear running back 1 for us this week. And at RB2, we have Derrick Henry. He's been on fire. Multiple 20-plus point games over the past couple weeks. Last week, put up over 30 against the Texans. He's going against the Chiefs. Yes, the Titans may go down in this game, but Derrick Henry is always that focal point in this offense. He's great, and he's the RB2. First player in the next tier, Alvin Kamara. We had him super high last week. Got over 40 points. This week, it is a tougher matchup against the Ravens. Also, the reason he's so high, there are so many teams on bye, 6 teams on bye. A lot of the elite running backs aren't playing this week. So Kamara bumps up in the rankings. Again, tough matchup, but when you get 40 points, you got to be an elite running back in the next week. And next up at RB4, we have Travis Etienne. We maybe disrespected Etienne a bit too much last week. We're not doing it again this week. He's our RB4. Who's he playing? The Las Vegas Raiders, who Alvin Kamara just put up over 40 points again. Etienne is this clear RB1, tons of rushing yards, tons of targets. We love him as an elite RB1 this week. RB5 is Josh Jacobs. He was really disappointing last week. Had under 8 fantasy points. That is obviously not a good thing, but the matchup is a lot better this week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. They are a much easier opponent than the New Orleans Saints. The whole Raiders offense was brutal last week. 0 points as a team, but again, matchup is so much easier. Expect Josh Jacobs to have a much better week this week. And at RB6, we have Aaron Jones. Again, we were kind of disrespecting him last week. Didn't think he'd do too amazing, but he got around 20 points. He didn't even score either against a tough Buffalo Bills defense. And who does he go against this week? The Lions. The Lions are terrible against RBs. We love Aaron Jones is in this spot as an RB1. And at running back 7, we got Dalvin Cook. He was awesome last week. Had over 25 points. Pretty solid matchup against Washington. And again, with all the bye weeks, have to bump him up. He's a clear running back 1 for us this week. Moving on to the next tier, we have Kenneth Walker. He was good last week. Wasn't amazing. Did score that touchdown at the end of the game to kind of save his week. This week goes against Arizona. Arizona was his first start a couple weeks ago. Put up close to 20 fantasy points. It's a pretty good matchup. Walker is a beast. We love him as a borderline RB1. And at running back 9, we got Joe Mixon. Didn't have the best game in the world last week, but his fantasy points were safe because he got so many targets. When you're going to get so many dump ups like that, you're going to be at least somewhat viable for fantasy. It's a solid matchup against the Panthers. Not amazing, not horrible, so he's a borderline RB1 for us this week. And next up, we got Ramondre Stevenson at RB10. Yes, Damian Harris did come in, take some carries, but it almost didn't matter because Stevenson was still getting fed targets against the Jets. This week against the Colts, it's not a great matchup, not a terrible matchup. He is a solid start for week 9. Next up, at running back 11, we got Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette was pretty solid last week, over 14 points. 2 weeks ago was horrible. But before that, he was balling. Had a game over 30 points, I believe. He was looking really good. Again, matchup is super tough against the Rams. They're one of the top 5 defenses against running backs. So again, don't expect a huge game from him, but still a solid borderline RB1. And our last player in this tier is Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor last week was pretty disappointing. Less than 10 fantasy points. Did go out in the middle of the game due to an injury, but did come back in this week. The matchup is so tough going against the Patriots. They are great against RBs. JT's an elite talent, but with Sam Ehlinger, his value for sure drops from his past weeks. And next up, first player in elite running back 2, we got Dameon Pierce. He's been great this season. Another game over 15 points last week, but we don't love the matchup against the Eagles. We would not be surprised at all if the Eagles take a big lead and they have to abandon the run, obviously affecting Dameon Pierce. Again, he's been playing great, just don't love the matchup. And at RB14, we have DeAndre Swift. Swift right now is a very controversial topic. He just came back from his injury, only had 5 carries. Jamal Williams clearly out-carried him. The touchdown reception did save his week. This week does have a pretty good matchup against the Packers. The Packers aren't amazing against RBs. Swift is so hard to rank. You don't know if he's going to get a ton of carries, if he's going to be limited again. We just don't know his role in this offense, so he's a high-end RB2. And next up, we got Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders has been really hit and miss this season. I believe he only had 9 carries last week, even though they were blowing out the Steelers. It's kind of weird. The Eagles have been so good, but they haven't been using Miles Sanders a ton. But the matchup is amazing. Texans are the worst team in football against running backs for fantasy. So again, matchup is phenomenal. Love the upside for Miles Sanders. And next up at RB16, we have Cordero Patterson. We don't even know if he's playing, but if he does, he has a pretty good matchup against the Chargers, who aren't great against RBs. Patterson, to start the year, was actually pretty solid. Again, he should gain that RB1 role if he is healthy, and we like his upside against the Chargers. And next up, we got James Conner. James Conner has not played in a few weeks. This Cardinals offense has been hit and miss. And obviously, he might not even play again this week, but this is assuming he does play. It's a good matchup against the Seahawks. Seahawks have not been great against running backs. And James Conner always has super high touchdown upside. If he does play, he's a mid RB2. Next up, we got Devin Singletary. The Bills did just trade for Nyheim Hines, who's going to play third downs, but Singletary still should be that first and second down back. Going against the Jets, it's a pretty good matchup. He is a solid start in week. And next up, we got Raheem Mostert. Mostert was awful last week. Let's just put it as it is. He should have done way better against the Lions. Terrible run defense. Should have had way more points. But again, it's a great matchup this week against the Bears. The Bears have been awful against running backs. He gets redemption against another bad team against RBs. Hopefully he puts up better points this week, and he's a mid RB2. And our last player in this RB2 tier is Michael Carter. He does have a very tough matchup against the Bills, but last week was the clear RB1. J-Rob didn't have a big role. Robinson could have a bigger role this week, being his second week in New York, but we still expect Michael Carter to slightly edge him out as the RB1. He got a decent amount of targets. I think it was 7. The Bills. Against the Bills, the Jets might go down in this game. Lots of throwing attempts. Carter does have pretty good PPR upside. First player in the last tier, we got Donta Foreman. He was awesome last week. 3 touchdowns, over 30 points. He was amazing. But Chuba Hubbard might return, and it's a much tougher matchup against the Bengals. Last week against the Falcons, Falcons' run defense is awful. It is so bad. Bengals is actually pretty good. And again, he might not be the pure bell cow with Chuba Hubbard returning, but again, like the possible upside as the low-end RB2. And our third last player of the video, our RB22, is David Montgomery. We told you to sit him last week. He was pretty bad, under 10 fantasy points. And this week has another decently tough matchup. The Dolphins are pretty good against RBs. And also Khalil Herbert had, I think it might have been double the carries Montgomery had. Montgomery still plays the first and second down, but whenever Herbert's on the field, they seem to give him the ball. Montgomery's upside isn't super high. Should get the red zone work, though. If he can get in the end zone, he should have a solid day in week 9. And at running back 23, we got Jamal Williams. He's earned this spot. That's basically how it is. 2 rushing touchdowns. He looks like he is the clear goal line back for the Detroit Lions. And this Lions offense has actually been pretty decent this year. Yes, they've had horrible games, but overall, they put up pretty decent points. Jamal Williams has actually been really good for fantasy. And when you are the goal line back, you always have touchdown upside. And with all the teams on bye, that makes him a low-end RB2 this week. And our last player of the video, our RB24, is CEH. Yes, it is reported Pacheco is now the starting running back in Kansas City, but we still like CEH as the best player for fantasy. He gets some catches, gets the goal line work. Again, not a great match against the Titans, but has some upside in week 9. And guys, thank you so much for watching. Again, if you guys want to join our free group chat with all of our free rankings, extra rankings to the ones we have on YouTube, it's the first link in the description. Thanks again for watching. See you guys next time.